Okay, so we're back. Hello,
Hello. All right.
Habibi. You all right?
Yeah. Just trying to hide the shine off the cabinet
Off,
behind me.
off the head.
Oh, it's off the bald spot at the back.
Yeah, you're
I
not
know that
doing
means
too
you've got
bad.
too much testosterone.
Yeah, I'm a bit more follically challenged, I think. But yeah, you're all right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All good. All
So,
good.
so we're back for a second one. I didn't think we'd make it to
Okay.
number two. But yeah, for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't think anyone would ever listen to it, and secondly, I didn't think we'd ever manage to coordinate our schedules. But we are back, and by
Yeah.
popular demand.
Wow. At least 3 people showing
Well, at
slight
least 3
interest.
requests, all from the same person, I think. But yeah, John, who signed their address as Broadmoor.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No. Good. We'll have another little go at it. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
go down well in with the inmates, but yeah, good. So training and stuff. You've been busy with
Yeah, a
things.
bit. Yeah, got the youth classes. They're great. They're going good guns until we sort of finish for Christmas. Getting in for a few training sessions for myself and feeling suitably beaten up. You take a bit of time off and you soon feel like you've softened up a bit. But now all good. Getting some time spent there. So
Good.
getting
Yeah.
going.
Well, with Christmas coming, we should try and do another one over Christmas, perhaps. I mean, I know it's December, but maybe we can fit in another one of these over Christmas, perhaps when we've got a little bit more time and so on. But yeah, I'm feeling a bit battered and bruised and broken in my old age at the moment, so trying to kind of keep training and teaching. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So last time the kind of feedback from a few people was that they really enjoyed sort of the video feed. We looked at knife attack in Germany and sort of broke it down a little bit. Nothing too complicated, nothing too deep, just a few kind of surface points. And we said this time that you'd pick a video that you thought illustrated some interesting stuff from a kind of combatives perspective, self-defense perspective, and I'd view it blind and
Yep.
see what we come up with, and maybe we just flip-flop like that in future. I'll pick something next time and you view it blind and whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to say anything kind of in advance of showing it?
Yeah. So it's if you were lucky enough to see our first podcast,
It's still available on YouTube.
very good. Yes, don't forget it. We should have some little sort of like hashtags or whatever.
We are
so people can find
YouTubers.
it. Yeah. So completely different this time. We're not looking at the sort of the incident and the aftermath of the violence like we did with the German video. It's much more of a sort of skills, tactics, sort of situational awareness. Something happened on a train that it's one that I get quite often from part of London into one of my projects for work. I'm actually on that train every so often, and there was an incident there a couple of years ago, and really it's the footage from that and just sort of try and look at some modeling of some tactics around how it went and how maybe it didn't go well for the people involved.
Cool.
Before it, but yeah, don't want to spoil the surprise, but yeah, just looking at
Tubular
how
environments,
problems escalate.
trains, one of my favorite things, planes, trains and automobiles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's high conflict points, people squashed together in inescapable tubes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. All right, well, share away.
cool. Okie doke. I'll try not to break internet as I share the screen. It's about minute 30 of watching. So really just we'll have a chat afterwards just on how you think the players were acting with each other, and I'll tell you the result of what happened at the end, but not until we watch the video. All right, so can you see a screen?
Not yet. It's coming. It's arriving. Yeah, it's showing now.
Cool. Okay, so this is some British Transport Police footage. So as a as you'd imagine, you're not going to see overly gory stuff on that you know, sort of in the public domain.
Right.
But it is a train, a regular commuter train, that goes from Surrey to central London. Incident happened sort of middle of the day. You can see it's sunny, not, you know, it's not night time, it's not people out drinking. Just hit play and see we go from there. So the chap who just walked on is one of the players. The chap walking on now is not the player. It's how it'll pan out between those two. The other chap there with the fur collar is his son, the big guy's son.
Everything is heading in the same direction. Where we're going. All the pelicans in great armadas flying towards what's ahead of us. Hold on to your hats. Will this be the biggest baseball we've ever seen? It looks like every single predator. They're utterly intimidating, throwing their full weight at the baseball.
So they move to a second carriage here. This is the continuation of that footage.
The Dorado are pushing the baseball up to the surface, trapping the sardines. Their streamlined bodies mean they can accelerate to speeds of 40 miles per hour. With precision and a ferocious appetite, they snatch pitch repeatedly. The baseball is getting more and more frantic. And I'm right in the middle of it.
Right.
Right.
So,
okay.
Let me tell you, about 5 seconds after that footage stopped, the younger chap in the jacket,
with the furry hat,
stabbed the fatter older gentleman 18 times and killed him there and then. So they didn't know each other. The chap who'd got on with his son, the older guy who'd got on with his son, were just traveling into town. The other guy had got on at a different station. We don't see what the original altercation was. So they were sat very close to each other, but only for about 5 seconds, and it's off camera. And then the younger chap with the hat, he and the jacket, he sort of gets up and starts to move away, and then the older chap is obviously clearly annoyed at something, and they're gesticulating, and then he follows him, and he goes through to the next carriage, and they remonstrate for, you know, that was a minute and 20 of sort of, you know, no doubt heated debate, and you know, cost him his life. Stood in the carriage whilst his 16-year-old son was sat in a seat in the other carriage waiting for him to come back.
Yeah, that's a dog day afternoon, that is, isn't it? You go out with your child and end up dead. That's, you know, first observation, the video is rather incongruous with whatever else you were watching on TV at the time. Sardines swimming to the surface was somewhat incongruous, but
it was Steve Batchel.
Also muffled the sound as well, I guess, which will stop us from any copyright issues. But I kind of sensed that it was obviously some sort of flashpoint over something, as they were kind of forced together on the train. It wasn't a particularly busy train, right? So
not at all.
You know, it's not you know, I lived in London for a few years, and often, you know, things, especially in the hot weather or when it was wet, things will kind of boil over on the tube when you know, kind of, it's crowded and people are in each other's space and someone looks or does something, but that wasn't that kind of situation. So my best guess would be that something was said or something was asked for and something was said, and then some sort of argument ensued about what was the appropriate behavior in that situation. There must have been something that set it off for that kind of argument. It wasn't immediately kind of physical situation. It wasn't a threat or anything. It became an argument very, very quickly. So we could probably speculate that something was said by one or the other. It looked like the older guy was kind of indignant at something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That out of it, although both were pointing at each other from very close range, right? It looked like the older guy in particular was indignant about something and was wanting to remonstrate with the younger guy in the hat. At least he looked younger. So yeah, without any further detail, my speculation would be that. Yeah. So other thoughts. Yeah. Just shows, right? The kind of main lesson, is kind of stranger danger one, which is you just don't know who you're dealing with, right? There's the possibility of that kind of clash of different understandings of acceptable behavior. I'm reminded of a piece or a kind of couple of sentences in C.R. Jahn's book FTW Self-Defense, which if anyone hasn't read it, it's well worth a read. But it's not really about self-defense. It's more about living on the streets and surviving on the streets. And Jahn says, Clint Jahn says something like, a lot of middle class people. I have no idea if that guy was middle class or not from the way he was dressed. Very difficult to tell. A lot of middle class people live in their own bubble, right, and take most of their kind of moral attitudes from soap operas about the working class, right? That they think that they can remonstrate and tell people off for behavior that they find unacceptable, and they because they do that, that's the way that they live their lives. They live a professional life or whatever, where the idea of physical violence is largely totally alien to them, and they will use words to ridicule and snipe at people and backbite and stuff like that. 99% of the people they come into contact with are often of the same ilk, and that's how they get ahead, by kind of the way that they speak and the kind of pressure that they put on through the use of kind of moral pressure they put on through the use of words. But when they run up against someone that doesn't play that game, which is probably a good 75% of the rest of the population, they're totally at sea when that person interprets what they say as just a challenge.
Yeah.
And if you're remonstrating and poking your finger in someone's face, and that's the way that you would you kind of deal with a subordinate at work or a family member that was out of line, by telling them off, someone that's not used to that, someone that actually has a very different perception of what interpersonal conflict is, just sees that as the first step to solving the argument by other means, and will become very violent as a response to that kind of personal slight. Personal slights are taken really seriously, but that's importing that idea into that particular situation. It may not have been that, but that's one plausible possibility. I would think that there's a clash of an understanding of what a argument is.
Sorry, just going to put it in context. Quite right, both from very different sort of social economic backgrounds. The older guy was like a senior IT development manager, typical middle class ish, getting the train from Surrey. It doesn't matter where you go in Surrey, it's not cheap. The other guy was from a more working class background, and clearly they very, very different circles, just from the way they interact with people in their daily lives, for sure.
And I think it just shows you never know who you're dealing with, right? Someone can look nothing, in physical sense. They can look non-threatening, but that betrays that belies what's going on underneath, right? It'd be super dangerous, right? And that's why we always say don't go there unless you absolutely have to, right? And whatever the slight was, you got to question why he needed to address it, right? Why he needed to lecture it, and then to follow the person, right? So you could see he was really indignant, right? And even if he had bitten back and so on, the guy in the hat looks like he tries to leave, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, there were a
there's the
couple
kind
of points.
kind of compounds the mistake of arguing back, right? So the first opportunity was just to brush it off, right? Like, just forget it, right? It's not worth the candle to argue with someone that you don't know, right? Just apologize if you've, or just, whatever, if they're being insulting or whatever, do your best to extract yourself from that situation, but don't take it upon yourself to moralize and lecture that person into better behavior.
Yeah.
Because there's one of two possible outcomes there, and that was the worst one, and then he compounds that by, after getting away with it, essentially, first of all, to then pursue the matter out of some kind of sense of righteous indignation into another carriage, right, which is then pushing the line on that one, right? So understanding that silly arguments can turn into life-changing situations, and to look to exempt yourself from that. I mean, you're never going to see the guy again in his life. What does it matter if he takes one up the rectum for that, right? It's like, whatever, mate. Yeah, that's fine. Hushing noises, soothing noises, move away, get your son away. And even if you feel a bit silly after it, for and men do, right? When we back down from something like that, we feel less of a man for it, right? As though we're ego invested in standing up to an injustice in that way. And if you back down, you're a lesser person, right? Interestingly, if you ask most women, they just think we're nuts for that, right? So they don't want you to do that by and large. If you've got, so female partners, it's like often trying to usher you away from that, because they find nothing particularly valuable in that kind of attitude. But we take it as a kind of a measure of our masculinity in many cases. If you but are you willing to die for that, over that, with some stranger, right? And hopefully as people get older, they mature up to that. But obviously this guy didn't, or that's what it seems to be like anyway. I don't want to cast any aspersions over him, but that's what it seems to be like. It was an argument that he didn't need to be in.
Yeah, I think for me, with a son who's probably only a couple of years younger than the chap's son there, even traveling on the same train at times, I'm really conscious of sort of how I teach my son to sort of stand up for himself by all means. But if someone gobs off and calls him a "see you next Tuesday," and he doesn't know them or care for them, it doesn't mean a thing. It isn't a thing. So I try and give him that social armor against taking umbrage at nothing. And this chap so clearly had what he wanted to say, and it mattered that he said it.
I've got to tell you this.
He's in the car when he follows him to the second carriage. He's doing this at the guy, and he's sort of laughing at some of the guy's comments. Clearly, absolutely no concept that he would get a smack in the mouth. Let alone the result that came from it.
No, I mean, I lived in London, and I every time I travelled on a bus or the tube, right, that there was always someone deeply odd on it, right? Every single carriage you were in, there was always one kind of Fruit Loop on it, and if there's not, then I used to think, well, the Fruit Loop must be me. It's my turn today, right? Sometimes you sat there in the middle of the winter, and there's a dude in Speedos and Doc Martin boots sat next to you with nothing else on, right? It's like, whoa, that's a bit weird. I'll get up and move on that one, or whatever. But if there's no weirdo on the tube, you worry that it is you, and everyone's looking at you in a strange way. So it's not like people in and around Greater London aren't used to having some odd characters, some unpredictable characters on the tube, right? And that's what we fear about the mad, that they're irrational, right? So living in that situation in a dense urban population like that, right? Most people are clued in a little bit to the fact that there are kind of irrational people around them, and that in that kind of confined environment, you don't want to be dealing with irrational people. That's why no one looks at each other on the tube, right? You just kind of look at your paper or your book, or you stare at the map, or you look into space on the floor. You don't make eye contact with people because you just don't know if they're mad or not. But yeah, so I mean, it's bad kind of decision to kind of pursue an argument, which looked like a sort of an indignation, I'm going to correct your behavior kind of argument, would be my best guess, rather than deliberately trying to perhaps humiliate him, right? So it's not like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas or something like that, where someone trying to score some points to make themselves look good by humiliating someone else. It doesn't seem to be doing that, right? It seems to be trying to kind of educate this person on their behavior, remonstrate with them, and then that's the first mistake, and then pursuing it beyond the first kind of section is the second mistake. So there's not a huge much, from my perspective, not a huge amount more to say about that particularly, right? He didn't need to be in that situation. The alarm bell should have been ringing straight away. Trying to exempt himself from that. If someone says something strange to you in the tube, then it's an indicator that you want to get away from them fairly quickly. And protect your child and get them away rather than get them into an argument as well. And beyond that, we can talk about body language and situational control and management and hands and stuff like that. But that would be suitable. That would be appropriate if the situation was slightly different. We could talk about all that kind of control of the situation, trying to perhaps talk someone down, or at least begin that process in the kind of vague hope that it might work. It often doesn't, especially not with irrational people. But at least to get you into a position of defensive capabilities, right? So to get your mind right, to get you physically set. But given the guy seemed like he was I don't want to say the aggressor, because he didn't look like he was particularly violent, but the older chap looked like he was the protagonist in the situation. It wasn't essentially a self-defense situation that we would talk about good and proper. If the guy in the hat had been super aggressive and the older guy was trying to get away, trying to extract himself, and the guy in the hat was pursuing it, so kind of that element was flipped, then kind of a discussion about kind of positioning, hands and tone of voice and all that kind of stuff would be appropriate. But I'm not sure that's applicable here, because the guy was the protagonist, and so the takeaway point is just don't be a dick. Don't be a dick and pursue the stuff, right? Get away. You're not gonna cure the world or people's behavior by doing it.
Purely ego, from my opinion. Like you say, you can look at some body cues towards the end when they're sort of arguing and they're quite close to each other, sort of dancing around that pole. You see the ultimately the guy becomes the attacker. He's very animated with one hand, and he's really driven into his pocket with the other hand. And he did draw the knife from there and stab him. He was very consciously guarding that hand in that pocket whilst the lot went on. But all of these tells, and that we talk about in training and teaching, where does the hand go? Why, what's your course of action when you can see the hands and then you can't see the hands, or the hand is then sort of hidden away, and as they approach and move around you, sort of clearly focusing on a part of the body, some pocket or some belt line or something. But all of that was lost in the fact that the sort of antagonistic older gentleman was just looking to ego-based lecture on the chap, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. There were some indicators that the guy in the hat was going to become physical. You could, you're absolutely right there. The kind of the other stuff aside, yeah, there were some indicators there, which from a training perspective is, preparation perspective is important. And I kind of got the sense, it's difficult just through the kind of grainy visual images and no background knowledge, that maybe the guy in the hat, was concerned that he might be violent and tried to get himself away, right? That he himself might be violent, right? So a lot of people, they know they have a short fuse. They know that they will do stuff if insulted, so they often try and get themselves away from that kind of situation. Who knows if that was what was going on through his head? But he did try to exit, right? From what I saw, it looked like he tried to exit by going to another carriage and was then pursued. So maybe he was trying to get away because he didn't want to do what he was kind of on the path to do, and so the guy pushed him, and then in some kind of crazy messed up way thought he had he had to do what he then did. But yeah, you're right. The body language was odd. The kind of the large clothing and slightly odd. Well, I don't know if it's odd headgear, but to me it is. I wouldn't wear something like that in and around the tube. But maybe it was a really cold day. But yeah, the hand obscurement, the clothing that helps with that, and so on, and the kind of the blading of the body, the movement of the arms, the reaching into the pockets. If you're clued into that, then you've got an inkling of what's coming. But chances are the older guy was so indignant and enraged that rather than being able to access that kind of higher brain functions to be observant in that way, gone mid-brain already because he'd spat the dummy and he was getting more and more worked up. Those kind of observation skills had probably deserted him pretty much, and so he wasn't picking up on those cues. I mean, we used to do that, you may remember when we used to do the fast courses, fear and adrenal stress training courses, which are they're fantastic, designed by a guy in the US called Matt Thomas originally, and then perpetrated further by people like Bill Kipp and Peyton Quinn. Amazing guy, Peyton Quinn. But it's kind of armored assailant training, and you put the course participants into a adrenalized state with a coach. And then someone will come out and woof at them, or kind of be aggressive, and they have to diffuse that, or they come out in the armor and create an assault. And it fits a very small, narrow preparation for violence. But one of the things we used to do while one of the bullet men was kind of engaging the subject in kind of aggressive argument and confrontation, and they're trying to pacify that person, get themselves into a position to defend themselves. We used to send another bullet man out to kind of walk the room and come up and stand right next to them and sort of look in their ear, and occasionally kind of put their arm the other side of their ear and kind of make the rest of the room laugh. All the others waiting for their turn would be laughing, but the person who was the subject of that drill out in the middle of the room would be so tunnel visioned that they wouldn't notice someone walk round a few times, stand a foot away from them, and look at the side of their head.
Straight down their look hole.
And occasionally you'd even get it where one or two of the more kind of observant would kind of go like that and then look back at the person who's being aggressive. And afterwards, because we video all and show people, they're like, well, I don't even remember. I never saw them for a start, but even the ones that kind of did a double take were like, no, I don't remember that at all. Don't remember that at all, right? So you just become so tunnel visioned under adrenal stress that you don't pick up on a lot of these things. So when you're indignant and angry, anger is just another way of thinking about fear in many ways. You don't pick up on that stuff, so you're not going to pick up on the cues of the hand going into the pocket, obscuring the hand, blading the body away, lifting the elbow up, dropping the head, all that kind of stuff.
And that's where the sort of the combatives bits comes in, I think, other than martial arts, is not that martial arts don't deal with weapons and sort of access of weapons and all sorts of violence, but the tactics of identifying what is going on, what posture is being modeled, why is this escalating like it's escalating in a, you know, a real-time scenario, as opposed to he's now going to attack me in the, you know, we're in the dojo and he's running at me with a side dagger. You know, it's you know, that's the combative bit that, you know, we've sort of been adding into to our instructions for a long time. But I think more and more, the older I get, and hopefully the smarter I get at avoiding violence, that's the stuff that's keeping me safe. 100%. When you're seeing that early on and you're just going, this isn't the place to be, that's not the right person to be near, you know.
I mean, last time we talked a lot about kind of the benefits of, you know, kind of honest martial arts like judo and Thai boxing and boxing and things like that, you know, which I think are, you know, huge part of the physical armory of what we have. And then the question we had was, well, what does combatives or Krav Maga or whatever it is add to that they don't have, right? You know, because I was making the point that often in the physical sense they're much better than kind of the combatives people, you know, depending on the kind of approach that you have. Well, one of the, you know, and we talked about weapon defense and so on last time, but yeah, I think you're right. You know, one of the things that combatives adds and is, you know, worth training and so on is that element of kind of awareness and observational skills and understanding the cues. Yeah, you can learn those things from a book or a video or whatever, but practicing them is also, you know, both fun, interesting, and key, right? And so you know, kind of practicing awareness of someone accessing a weapon, you know, that we do in class, you know, various drills around that, you know, just like modeling out, watching someone access it, trying to access it in the middle of a conversation whilst, you know, making it as surreptitious and hidden and clandestine as possible. Doing it in low light, doing it with heavy clothing on, which is more difficult to spot if someone's got a puffer jacket on. And building that into the drills is, you know, I think one of the kind of the major elements of what combatives training generally offers, that is in addition to or is not offered by kind of more traditional sporting martial arts applications, as fantastic as they are. So you know, kind of knife awareness, body language cues, things like that, you know, which would give those signs and symbols of someone having an intention to use a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, anyone who watches the podcast, you can, for your own learning, you can go back, look at the video, and you can look at some of the body posture and picture from it. But clearly it was no use in this instance. You know, the big guy just got it wrong.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, it's that keeps you safe. It's not the you know, dragon's beak to the rear wisdom tooth or whatever it is, or the, you know, the flying knee or whatever other cool physical stuff you got. You're right. It's, you know, it's the understanding the body language, realizing when your ego's involved, trying to extract yourself from that situation, not taking it too personally, and looking for the signs that it's going to go south, right? You know, that's the best bit, right? And that's the stuff that, yeah, you know, you can learn it from book, but practicing it is key, right? Just seeing that pattern over and over and over again. So, you know, different people within the class modeling it out slightly differently, right? Someone comes towards you palming a knife. Well, if you've done that 1,000 times in, you know, 5 years of training, then chances are you'll spot that, right? You know, more likely to than not, I would guesstimate on that. Whereas someone who's, you know, never even thought about that is, you know, it was virtually certain not to realize that someone has a weapon on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just the mindset of going, right, you know, I'm in some kind of dispute, and now I realize they've got a weapon, right? And that just changes the whole perspective on things, right? You know, if that guy in that video had, you know, at some point just like woken up to the fact that the guy had a knife on him, if he'd seen a flash of something, how would that have changed his attitude in the moment there and then? Because it's a huge attitude adjuster to realize that someone has a weapon.
Yeah, 100%. It's a shame, but I think, you know, a few things that came from it. Reports are he was a very big guy. He's like 6'3", and you can see he's quite heavy set because he's a bit older. he's probably got through ever since primary school, from first having punched someone when he was 8. Everyone's just left him alone because he's massive, and you know that goes down in legend. Like, oh, he was dead tough at school. You're like, yeah, but you were all 8. Don't forget, you know. And you move in sort of, you know, educated circles, professional. You're a big guy. You can, you know, you can gob off a bit, and people back down. You know, simple, you know, sort of animalistic responses.
There's a great point. It reminds me, you know, when I was at primary school, I realized very early on in my life that, you know, actually you don't want to be physical with people. I remember at the playground one day, there were a couple of kids kind of getting a bit physical with a friend of mine who was about a year younger than me at primary school. They kind of, one of them had hit him, and so I thought, you know, I'll wander over and I hit one of them in the chest or something like that, and he ran off crying, and I thought, oh, this is great, you know, big hero and all this sort of stuff. My friend Craig was kind of very appreciative and so on, and so for a couple of days I thought I was, you know, kind of the bee's knees and so on. A couple of days later, there was an argument over a marble or something on the playground, and there was another lad there who was about the same age as me, but he was you know, special lad. You know, he had that kind of snot that was constantly on his top lip, right? Yeah, it was like, yeah, constant stream of snot, and it got a bit kind of argumentative, and I forget exactly what the situation was, probably in about 7 or 8, and I remember punching him in the chest, and he didn't move, right? It just immediately punched me back like 3 times harder, and I thought, oh crikey, shit, what have I done, right? And then he just like kept on punching me, and I was like, and then I remember being on the floor and he was giving me a shoeing, and I thought, no, that's a fool's game, right? Yeah, the first one I was throwing my weight around, thinking I was the bee's knees, right? Unjustifiably so, and then, you know, I came up against someone who didn't look much, but actually just like made mincemeat of me, and it's like, yeah, I'm not, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, he didn't even bat an eyelid, right? Just like, you know, I hit him once and he just immediately punched me back twice as hard. Well, at that point, you was stunned. Never tried that again, right? Yeah, never tried that again, right? You know, this, you know, taught me a lesson early. But yeah, some people, you know, they go through life perhaps thinking, you know, because of their attributes and so on, they you know, they can stand up for themselves, and you know, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and all the evidence shows that, you know, men overestimate their ability to fight by about 3,000% or whatever.
That, well, what I do in that situation is, and you think, oh yeah, have you trained a bit, have you? No, but I would just, you know, I'd see red and I'd kill him.
Oh yeah, I'd go mental. Yeah, armchair quarterbacking. Yes,
absolutely.
It's the only thing in the world, right? You know, and again, it's back to that male ego investment. It's the only thing in the world where men have that view. I think I've heard Baz Rutten talking about it before, or Joe Rogan or someone on some sort of clip, which is, you know, if you know, if you've got someone who's a great darts player, you know, people don't go to him. Well, actually, maybe that, because a lot of people go to the pub and play darts. But you've got someone, you know, who's great, you know, croquet player or a great tennis player or something. People don't go, oh yeah, well, I would do this. I could do that. I could beat you. Right? Yeah, it's like, no, you couldn't, right? Everyone knows that. You know, if you're winning championships in tennis, right? You know, the average person that's never picked up a tennis racket in their life doesn't believe that they can beat you. But the thing with trained fighters, I mean, you know, really hard-bitten fighters, is everyone thinks they could do better. Oh yeah, I could have him. I just see red. Well, you practice, do you? Like, well, no, but I'm just a handful, right? Yeah, really, it's like, no. If you ever fought with a real fighter, a professional fighter, or someone that's a really kind of decent amateur or semi-pro, then you realize, you know, that they're light years different to kind of the untrained person, right? You know, not just in skill and resilience and stuff like that. You know, it's just a totally different ball game. You know, it's like you know, picking up a rugby ball and trying to play rugby a bit against a professional rugby player. Right? You just realize what mountains of people these are. But yeah, it's the only, you know, I think it's the only thing in the world where, you know, most blokes go, yeah, I could have him. Yes.
Yeah.
Even though I've never done a day's training in my life. Yeah, it was. I think it was Baz Rutten. Maybe it's like, you know, the number of times that people have said, "Oh, I want to fight you. I'm gonna fight you," and so he is like square up with them outside a bar or whatever it was when he was a doorman, and after like 5 seconds of them throwing kind of windmill punches, they go, "Oh, enough now," and he goes, "Oh no, actually you didn't want to fight me, you just wanted to hurt me, and now it's my turn."
Yeah, yeah. Bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah. All ego, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, very male problem. You know, obviously we've got mixed, you know, sort of, you know, boys and girls in the younger classes, men and women in the older classes. You know, it's never a fair split, but yeah, I'm sure there's two very different perspectives on it. You know, and we both know generally women come into training because they've experienced a problem. Sadly, and men come into training because they're probably smart enough to know that actually they can't do something, and they usually haven't experienced a problem. But you know, we're a very small percentage of people that go out there and put that effort in. And everyone thinks they can stand up and, you know,
have a go.
Sort of square up to anyone.
Some people don't, right? You know, some people, some blokes are very honest and go, "Yeah, no, I have no idea what to do. I'm fearful of this," but many are on the other side. You know, they're the ones that don't come to class. Yeah. And it's also, you know, in mixed groups, you know, you have to kind of focus your attention in different places, because the stuff on sort of ego challenge and dealing with that and extracting your, the kind of talk that you'd have in class about, you know, what does it really matter if some bloke pushes in front of you in the supermarket queue just to prove he's a bigger man than you are? You don't have to have that conversation with most women, right? It's like, yeah, whatever, I'll get involved in that. And that's also partly why we, you know, provide women's only courses, because the kind of the problems are very, very different to those ego-based problems. But by and large, not always, but by and large, no, interesting stuff. No, that's an interesting video. And it kind of raises another aspect, I suppose, which is, you know, we were just talking about in terms of training, which is, I suppose, around resilience and mindset and things like that. So we train a lot for the kind of the cue recognition and so on. But one of the other aspects, which, you know, is to talk about those who overestimate their ability to fight. You know, part of that, I think, is just general resilience. You know, when you train on a regular basis, you get more resilient. You get the mindset of being physical with people, and then often you don't want to be physical with people. You realize that, you know, it's great to train that way and you have fun and you work out stuff that way, but you don't need to be physical with anyone. My dog's barking. There's some fireworks going off. I don't know if you can hear that, but and so one of the interesting things about combatives versus martial arts, I always think, is the kind of the emphasis in combatives on training mindset and stuff like that, and you know, how you train mindset, how you instill the right mindset into people, and I kind of understand. I've done that. You know, I've spent time, you know, kind of training mindset deliberately as a specific thing. Interestingly, martial arts, you know, I'm thinking again about judo and Thai boxing and MMA and stuff like that. Very rarely, you know, apart from kind of sports psychology, you know, like preparing for an event,
tactics and prep,
and you know, kind of getting your confidence high and so on. You know, reading kind of stuff about Muhammad Ali and George Foreman fights. You know, Norman Mailer's book, you know, about how they built George Foreman up psychologically for the fight in the Rumble in the Jungle. You know, apart from that kind of sports psychology, you know, professional fighters very rarely talk about getting the right mindset, right? You know, being aggressive and so on, because they get that from their training. Right. Yeah, that comes with the training. You know, first of all, you want to fight. If you're practicing a fighting art where you're competing, you then probably want to fight. It's already halfway there. But then they don't specifically work on it, at least not in the gyms I've ever been in. But in combatives, it's a big thing, right? You know, you've got to develop people's mindset in particular as something slightly separate to developing their physical skill set. I always find that a little bit odd. I get it. You know, if you're only doing a short course, then you gotta maybe instill the desire to survive. You know, some people lack that, or you gotta kind of make people a little bit more aggressive, giving them a kind of the permission to be kind of a little bit more tenacious and so on. But I kind of think if you train for more than a few weeks, if you're in a class on a regular basis, then most of that stuff should be through the kind of the physical drills you do and the you know the sparring and so on.
Yeah, rather than, you know, long-term cultivation of a combative mindset is going to turn you into a combative person, and then you're the one on the train that they're moving away from, you know.
Yeah. And also it just strikes me as slightly bizarre, you know. And I've done it for many years with various people and so on. You know the role playing, which actually looks like, you know, really bad amateur dramatics pantomime a lot of the time, you know, and you know it's just Rob, you know, doing it to you. He's not really a bad guy, and and everyone, you know, even the kind of the accountants from Newcastle end up sounding like some sort of East End gangster. It's like, when were you in the cast of Snatch, right? You know, it's like, why do you have to pretend to be some kind of East End gangster just to kind of look as though you got the right attitude and the right mindset, and and you have to look thuggish in some ways, right? That somehow that thuggish kind of demeanor is what it means to have the right mindset. Yeah, I've done that, you know. So you know, no bones there, but I'm just not overly convinced that you can install that skill, that set of virtues or whatever you might want to call it into people through this kind of focus on it. I think it's maybe a bit like trying to go to sleep. If you try to go to sleep and you focus on going to sleep, you're not going to sleep. You have to focus on something else. Yeah, focus on counting sheep and you might go to sleep. Yeah, focus on getting the right mindset. I think it's probably just, you know, bad acting and some kind of self-deception, which will probably fall apart when it comes to it. Or you
risk of getting you in bigger trouble.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a reasonable individual, that you've got so far through life negotiating your way out of issues if they've arisen, and suddenly you've done some training and you go, you know, you want Sam, and then you're in a fight. 100%. You've play acted yourself into getting chinned. You know.
Yeah, and whether you would actually talk like that and do that when someone is actually on the train, you probably just regress to your, you know, kind of middle class accountants kind of demeanor and tell them off and whatnot. Yeah, no, I'm less convinced by that kind of training the older I get, and I just don't want to create people like that. A friend of mine a few years ago said, what I want to create is polite, normal people who are capable of defending themselves, not people who are, you know, looking like porcupines so that no one will attack them, right? You know, if that's what, you know, if you're trying to create this outward persona to deflect attention, then, you know, is it really worth the candle? And I'm not sure it is, but, you know, I think you can create that resilience in other ways, and with that resilience comes a kind of a confidence that you don't need to be physical, and that you don't want to be physical, let alone need it, and that, you know, that exudes a confidence in and of itself, right? You know, so yeah, hard drills, you know, and again, within the combatives community, you know, kind of hard drills are there, but I also kind of think, well, yeah, and often, well, why would we spar? It's a symmetrical kind of thing, and we do a lot of sparring in class. And well, actually, one of the things it does for you is it just makes you more resilient, right? If you've done some hard sparring, I don't mean just tappy stuff. If you've done some hard sparring, then over a period of years, you're just becoming way more resilient, physically resilient. You're just becoming cantankerous and difficult to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're difficult to hurt, you know, you got confidence, or you will
get confidence. You've got something you can apply back, and you're not put off by, you know, like Mike Tyson said, you know, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face, but you get punched in the face a few times, and you know, it doesn't stop you. you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's yeah, the sparring's an excellent aspect of it, although
yeah.
yeah, not representative of, you know, real sort of
No.
you know, street scenario based violence necessarily, but yeah,
But it
makes
just
you tough.
creates a certain resilience, right? You know, one of the things that, you know, we often notice, especially now, I hate to be sort of the rose-tinted glasses person, everything was better in our day, but the kind of profile of people that come to Krav Maga is slightly different, to Combatives is slightly different. But generally, I just kind of think there's a slight downward trend in kind of the amount that people have kind of used to being physical with other people in a kind of a training environment. They're just not used to getting pushed and pulled around. They're not used to getting bumped and battered and so on. They're not used to being physical with each other, and that can come as quite a shock. But over a period of months and years, you know, once they stop overreacting or underreacting to it, but it just becomes a kind of a normality, then, you know, they become much more durable, and you see that kind of change in confidence and you know, relaxing with life and so on. You know, so people, you know, when people say to me, "What do I do to get into the kind of self-defense mindset?" My answer is, you know, just train hard.
Yeah.
You know, train hard and you know, put yourself through, you know, a little bit of suffering on a regular basis. Not getting sparked out and black eyes and broken noses. If you really want that, then go to the combat sports and compete. Right? Most of the people that come to us, they don't want that. If they did, they would go there. But, you know, we can scale it back a little bit, but you still have to do some of that stuff. And then do other stuff that makes you physically stronger by a little bit of suffering. Right? You know, so, you know, what are the supplemental stuff that you can do outside of class? I mean, you know, if someone came to you and said, "Well, all right, I'm doing some combatives training on a regular basis. I'm getting kind of throwing some fists. I'm getting hit and stuff, but you know, I want to add some stuff to that to make me a little bit more resilient, a little bit stronger, a little bit kind of more physical and confident." What would your kind of go-to stuff be in terms of supplementary training?
Yeah, so I think it's like you say, put yourself through a little discomfort. That isn't, you know, go out and get yourself loads of shiners, but, you know, carry heavy stuff, lift heavy things, fatigue yourself, you know, train on your own. So even if it's striking drills, you know, fatigue your hands, you know, fatigue your wrists. You know, do physical, sort of explosive physical exercise, kettlebell based stuff, farmers carries, things where you pick up, you know, 2 20-liter jerry cans and they're not too heavy, and you walk 50 meters with them and they're a little bit heavy, and you keep repping 50-meter walks of those, and things ache, but you don't have to stop. And the ability to not stop till the point where you go, I can no longer close my hand around this, you go, yeah, that was good, I feel tougher for that, you know. And you callous your you
Yeah,
know, your palms, and you callous your mind a bit. So
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, so many people who are in and around the stuff go, "Oh, yeah, you gotta lift really heavy weights, you gotta go bodybuilding or whatever it is, or you need to run lots, you know, road work and so on." And no, I'm in agreement. You know, the kind of end game of ours, what we're training for, you know, explosive movements, bit of muscle, strong sinews, but, you know, whatever you do, whether that's kind of, yeah, don't do too much of it, or, you know, do your train whatever on. You don't need to, you know, to kind of lift every day, but kettlebells, Olympic lifting, something that's explosive, but as well as training your body, actually it kind of makes you stronger mentally as well. I'm a big fan of kettlebells. You know, I think everyone should train kettlebells because they have so many virtues to them. Yeah, you're not going to build kind of slabs of massive muscle. No, you can build muscle and make you strong, but they do so much more for you physically in terms of your musculoskeletal system. But also they're really complicated. You know, they're things that and same with Olympic lifting, right? You can't just go in and do Olympic lifting or kettlebelling like you can with a Nautilus machine or a bench press machine or something, which, you know, people want quick fixes. Whereas for Olympic lifting or kettlebell, you know, it disciplines your mind because you have to learn how to do it properly. You
yeah,
can't half lift a kettlebell, it will mess you up. You have to
yeah,
have proper technique, and that takes time. you have to learn how to do it, and it can be a couple of years before you feel really comfortable lifting a kettlebell through all the major lifts, right? And yeah, I don't want to be a particular sort of technique Nazi about kettlebells, but you should be able to lift, a kettlebell correctly to a sufficient degree, which is quite a high level of skill before you really start to push kettlebell exercise. But it disciplines the mind. It makes you concentrate on something and learn it while you're getting exhausted, while your joints and muscles are growing as well. I think that's again part about resilience, physical resilience, mental resilience as well, and being exhausted from that, and trying to concentrate on something whilst getting exhausted is a good way of kind of adding to that sort of resilience and mindset.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And whatever, if there's a reason that you can't be, swinging 40k around over the top of your head because your shoulder's done in, or whatever,
that's my range of movement. Yeah.
Thinking that, there's other ways, like I said, carry some heavy jerry cans around, get an awkward piece of concrete and do some relays with it. It's rough on your hands, it hurts a bit, but even sort of, if you want to be a bit more civilized, stick a pack on your back with some food and a bit more water than you need and a bit of weight, and get out for a hike. And if the weather's bad, get cold, wrap up, be wet, know that you'll come back and be warm and dry later, crack on through it. It's just that exposure and indoctrination sort of thing.
You got to have some of the special sauce, right? You got to have a little bit of that resilience, okay, I got hit, but so and again, when it comes to training, not stopping when you get hurt, right? I don't mean just get punched in the head, but occasionally we get kind of minor injuries. Your finger gets bent back, or you kind of get kicked in the knee or something, and it hurts, and just don't say anything, carry on. Unless you can't carry on, right? So many people, I really hurt my elbow on that one, and was it still working in the way it should? Yeah, but it really hurts. Okay. No, I need to stop and sit out and put some ice on it. Okay, all right, well, if you knew, sure, right, it's going to be a shock to the system, but that should pass after a while. You see rugby players rugby players on the field with a ice pack strapped to their neck and straight back on a minute later. The human body can take quite a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember days of old when we would maybe some of the seminar stuff. I think you stuck your nut on me and split my eye, sort of thing. And
well, we both split our head, didn't we? I had a little cut on the side of my head which was bleeding, and you had a big welt and a split, and we were both pissing with blood. And
just carry on talking to everybody, and they're all sort of, the instructions clearly not going in, because they're both looking, they're looking at us both going, oh God, they look really battered. But it's like, what are we going to do? You're not going to stop and put ice on it, and I'm not going to cry. It's like,
rush to the toilet with
I'll take that closed with a bit of zinc oxide, and we'll sort it out in an hour.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I snapped my bicep tendon teaching, I knew I'd done it instantly. Where the guy straightened up and I felt it ping. Okay, well, what am I going to do? Am I just going to suddenly say to everyone, I need to stop the class now because I kind of felt it? And my arm still works, right? I know it hasn't got a great deal of power in it. I'll still work. Yeah, it's like, got to carry on. It doesn't mean I'm particularly hard or anything like that, but I think the attitude is kind of helpful to go, all right, well, all right, I know I've done something wrong, but is there anything to be gained by stopping now, or is there anything to be lost by not stopping now? If not, then don't make it your immediate knee-jerk reaction to stop, because at some point in your life you might need to keep going when it really hurts.
Yeah. I think between us we probably have, and anyone who's done either any of the sort of the mill guys who come to class, or the uniformed guys, sometimes you're doing stuff and you cannot stop. You don't have that option, and it's a good mind. That's the mindset that I think does matter, not the porcupine attitude as you go through town.
Yeah, absolutely. It's internal. People wouldn't know from looking at you, as trying to make that mindset an external physical thing. So you're scary. It's like, it's not. Like you say, it's probably all gongs and drums anyway. But Good.
Good.
Well, we should probably. I mean, we're up to an hour now, hour and 10, so we should probably knock things on the head and come back at a later date.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched the start of the first one back. I liked the title sequence. So I realised that I haven't got the same jumper on this time as the one where we're stood against the car. It's a different version of the same jumper, but it reminded me of when we took that picture at 2G probably about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So we should get back and do another one of these fairly soon.
Definitely, yeah. Plenty of time as we're coming into sort of Christmas and holes and all that. And there's, you know, I think we can pretty quickly come up with some sort of, festive related ones. There's lots of drinking, there's lots of time in town, there's loads of excuse for sort of, flashpoints and topics around that.
Yeah,
so.
I'll find the next video.
Cool, look forward to it.
All right, good. Well,
cool.
Good to see you anyway. I'll see you probably during the week.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, take care, have a good evening. See you, bud.